Hello, thank you so much for watching. This is Warren Redlick. We're going to talk about what Elon Musk said on X. I just watched the video from Tesla owner Silicon Valley where he interviewed Elon, or they interviewed Elon, and Elon actually went to maybe 25 or 30 trillion. So this is a big deal. Now, currently Tesla's market cap is somewhere around $1 trillion. So 20 trillion would be a 20x. And I'm going to go through some numbers that show you how we can get there. And I actually think, if you follow me, you know I think this is low. I think the upside is much higher than this. The upside is more like 100 trillion, possibly higher than 100 trillion. I get to $20 trillion on Robotaxi alone, and I'll show you those numbers tonight, or it's morning for you guys, it's night for me. I'll show you how I get to 20 trillion plus using simple numbers. And then I've got a little bit of a spreadsheet that shows the path. And then I'm gonna show you a little bit more just, straight up numbers that I'm gonna have to ramble off. So let me dive into this. This is a spreadsheet that I did yesterday or today. And you can look at Q1 of 20. Like, there's sort of this question for me, like, where do we go from here first? What's the path? Hello, Rob. And just really quick, hello to Rob, hello to Mark, hello to B. Everyone watching, thank you for watching. Mark and B are two of the most regular participants in the chat. And Mark is has been a moderator. Is also Mark Plott and Jim Whitehead, who will probably show up at some point, maybe. So I wanted to give you guys an idea of a path to where we're going in the near term. And that's not going to get us to the $20 trillion market cap, but you can see the path. And then I'm going to lay out the numbers that I've laid out many times before, but I want to show where I think we might be heading. So if you look at Q1 of 2026, that's January to March of 2026. We're in July of 2025 now. There's this question that I don't know the answer to. Nobody really knows the answer. I'm not even sure Elon knows the answer. How many robotaxis will Tesla have? Oh my God, Brian's in the chat. Brian Roshetsky. Thank you, Brian. Brian and I spent some time together in Austin. Yes, I agree, Connor. Given the revenue numbers Elon gave, 20 trillion is way too low. So how many robotaxis does Tesla have now? It's maybe less than 100 operating in Austin. How many will they have in Austin when they expand to 10x their current area, which is what I think Ashok and Elon talked about, or maybe it was Vaibhav and Elon talked about. And then they're about to start in Silicon Valley with humans in the driver's seat. But soon, presumably to go to with humans in the passenger seat and then no humans in the car. They have a bunch of other places that they're working on: Florida, Nevada, Arizona, probably other spots in California, other spots in Texas. And Elon has said they might be technically able to cover half of the United States. Half the United States population by the end of this year. And I think most people think he's being over optimistic there. But I want to go to, let's say, Q1 2026, and let's go to March, the end of the quarter. And the question is, how many robotaxis will Tesla have operating at that point? And I think it's reasonable to say they might have 10,000. Now, look, you can say my numbers are too aggressive and they won't be 10,000 until Q2, right? But I think these are reasonable ballpark numbers. And again, you can push these back a couple quarters if you want to. I don't think it matters a whole lot. So let's go with Q1 2026. Let's suppose you have 10,000 robotaxis operating. So Q1 2026, you've got the greater Austin area. You've probably got a couple other Texas cities like San Antonio, maybe trips between Austin and San Antonio, maybe some other cities in Texas. You're operating in some of Florida, if not all of Florida. You're operating in the San Francisco Bay Area, probably at that point beyond the Silicon Valley area and into East Bay and the rest of the Bay Area, and probably in Los Angeles as well. Waymo operates in Los Angeles, so it's not crazy to imagine they'll be operating in Los Angeles. The Phoenix area has Waymo. So wherever Waymo is operating, there's a straightforward path for Tesla to follow and operate in the same way. So I think it's reasonable when you cover the area that they're talking about covering, that you would have 10,000 robotaxis by the end of Q1. And I think those robotaxis, you would expect them to do ballpark 50,000 paid miles a year on average. And just where I get that number from. If the typical vehicle drives 100,000 miles a year, keep in mind these vehicles are driving 16, 18 hours a day, right? If you do the math, that works out to about 100,000 miles a year. And that's not, I mean, I have a friend who drives 50,000 miles a year, right? Just for work, because he goes to different, this is a traffic lawyer in New York State, and he drives to a bunch of different courts. And so 5 days a week, he's driving, 50 miles here, 30 miles there, 100 miles there, and he covers about 50,000 miles a year. So these are going to be driving more than him, and they're going to drive on weekends, and they don't get tired. So I think 16-hour days, 18-hour days, I think the average of, and then if they drive 100,000 miles a year, half of them paid. I don't think that's crazy. I think long term, I think I went there later on that they optimize a little bit more and they get to like 60% of the miles are paid instead of 50%. Well, there we go. So, but if you just assume 50,000 paid miles a year, and then the biggest pushback I got when I posted this was on the dollars per mile. Some people say it should be $1 a mile. They can't go to $1 a mile yet. They can't. Here you go, B. That one's for you. They can't go to $1 a mile yet because if you price too low, demand is too high, and people have to wait too long for a ride. So $2 a mile is probably too low early on because you're undercutting Uber and Lyft, and if you have too much demand, you don't have enough cars to satisfy the demand. But ballpark, $2 a mile is not crazy. Well, that's $100,000 a year per car in revenue. That's Tesla's robotaxi revenue of $1 billion. Now, this is where I get into a problem with Elon, as Elon said he doesn't see robotaxi being material to the financials until the end of 2026. It's like, well, I don't think it's crazy from the numbers he's talked about to say 10,000 vehicles, 50,000 miles, $1 billion in revenue. If you've got $1 billion in revenue, that's probably enough to be on the financials. I don't think it's crazy to say you're going to be on the financials if you got $1 billion in revenue. And because it's so profitable, right? Because I've got the cost per paid mile here at 80 cents per paid mile, which is 30 cents more than what Elon said Model Y's cost is likely to be. So if it's 80 cents per paid mile and you've got $2 a mile, you've got $60,000 in gross profit per robotaxi, or $600 million in Tesla gross profit. Now, gross profit last year was about 20 billion. So this is a significant item that I think would be relevant in the Q1 earnings call if you get to these numbers. Mark Potocnik says $2 per mile is too much for me. Well, Mark, if you ride Uber, you're paying more. This is when people say $2 a mile. It's not about what's for you. This is a very common thing I encounter with people when I talk about Tesla. B, I hope you're counting my nose touches. It's a very common thing when I talk about Tesla, and somebody will say, well, I want to see a Cybertruck that has 500 miles range. Okay, well, everybody wants 500 miles range. Everybody wants more range, but the reality is, will people pay more for that range, or would people rather have a less expensive vehicle? Oh, I want this, I want that, I want a 9-passenger van. Okay, that's nice that I want an RV. That's nice that you want those things, but what Tesla does is they make the things that people will pay for. And if you're not willing to pay for it, that doesn't mean other people aren't willing to pay for it. And the practical reality is a lot of people are paying more than $2 a mile for taxi rides, Uber rides, Lyft rides, and so on. That's why $2 a mile is a reasonable price at the beginning. And I think it could even be higher. It could even be $2.50 a mile at the beginning. And then over time, and going way beyond this, the price comes down to $1 a mile and less. But we'll get to that later in this live stream. So anyway, just Q1 2026, I see Robotaxi potentially generating $1 billion in revenue and $600 million in gross profit, which I think is significant enough that ends up being on the financials. I mean, I think that's, in terms of gross profit, it's more than Megapack. It's more than Tesla Energy, right? Tesla Energy is around $2.5 billion in revenue, which is more revenue, but its gross profit is nowhere near $600 million. Gross profit is much, much lower than that. Services is 3 billion. So I think you'd want to see it as a line item on the financials. And then if you go to I left Q2 out, but if you figure Q2 is at 20,000 or so, or 15,000, the numbers go up and you're getting to the point where it's significant. But let's go to Q3 2026, which is when Elon said it might be significant on the financials. Okay, so I've increased it to 25,000 robotaxis. And keep in mind, Tesla makes like 5,000 vehicles a week. Is that right? I think they make somewhere around 5,000 vehicles a week. 5,000 yeah, it's in that ballpark. They can certainly churn out 5,000 vehicles a week if they got it. So getting from 10,000 to 15,000, they could do that in 3 weeks, right? It doesn't take 2 quarters to get there in terms of the volume of vehicles produced. And I think we're still on Model Y at this point. Later on in 2027, we're going to see a surge in cyber cabs that's going to change things. But for now, we're just talking about Model Ys. Maybe they'll have Model 3s in the network. I don't know. It looks like they're just doing Model Y, just to be clear. So if you have 25,000 robotaxis, still 60,000 paid miles, still $2 a mile, you get to 120,000 in revenue per robotaxi. They've gotten more. The idea there about the 60,000 paid miles a year is they've gotten more efficient in managing the network. So you're still driving 100,000 miles, but you're more efficient about dead miles. Dead miles are where the car is driving with no one in it. So you're going to have dead miles in them at the end of the day when the car drives to get charged, when it positions itself for the next day. And you're going to have dead miles between the last drop-off and the next pickup. But as the network gets more efficient, it optimizes so those dead miles are shorter. So 120,000 in robotaxi revenue per vehicle. That's $3 billion in revenue. That's a line item. That's the same as Tesla services. That's more than Tesla Energy this past quarter. I assume that the cost per paid mile has fallen to 60 cents per paid mile as they get more efficient at operating their network. Gross profit per robotaxi is now $84,000, and you get $2.1 billion in gross profit, that's in a quarter. Sorry. And by the way, these numbers are the annual run rate. This isn't the quarterly numbers. So I should have been clear about that. This isn't the quarterly numbers. This is what your numbers would be for a year. So I'm a little off there. So $3 billion in revenue would not be more than Tesla services, which is $3 billion in 1 quarter. But you're on a pace there. And then the $2.1 billion in gross profit, that's 10% of gross profit. For a year. That's huge. So I think this is how you could end up seeing it on the financials in Q3 of 2026. Now let's skip ahead. Let's go to Q1 of 2027. At this point, the technology's locked. Cybercab is going. You've got regulatory approval in a lot of places. 100,000 robotaxis might be less than you're going to see. You're going to be throughout California. You're going to be throughout Florida. You're going to be throughout Texas. Easily half the United States population is going to have access, is going to be covered by the robotaxi network. Whether there's enough robotaxis, I don't know. Just really quick, 14.4 says each locality will have their own barriers to entry. Not in Florida, and several other states adopted Florida's law, or a similar law to Florida, which says that local governments have no say. It's a state-level decision. If it's a state-level decision, then the local governments have no say. This is a problem in Florida because Key West, for example, interfered, and Broward County both interfered with Uber. And Governor DeSantis in 2019 signed a law that says that local governments have no say. They can't regulate them and they can't tax them. They can't regulate or tax self-driving cars or robotaxis. So, and I think several other states adopted that. California, you might be right. Arizona, you might be right. I don't think you're right in Texas. I don't think there's an issue in Texas either. So if you follow this path, Tesla's on a pace for $12 billion in robotaxi revenue, which is as much as services and more than Tesla Energy at least at this point, and gross profit of $9 billion, which is ballpark half of Tesla's gross profit last year, right? And then you get to Q4 of 2027, it starts to get crazy, where Tesla has 1 million robotaxis, right? And I just think that and I'm not counting, like, they're probably going to be operating in China. China is probably going to say yes, and China is a bigger market than the United States. Probably going to see it in Canada at some point, maybe in Mexico. I'm sure Europe will resist. I'm sure some European countries will resist, but other European countries will probably allow it. Maybe Australia. Australia is not that big. But the big markets are the United States and China. Japan maybe being a significant market, but I wouldn't be surprised if Japan resists. There will be states in the United States that resist. I don't know whether the Trump administration will push federal laws that knock aside state interference and local interference. So if you get to Q4 2027, like I projected, 1 million robotaxis, 60,000 paid miles a year again. Now, you've got enough robotaxis that you're starting to reduce the price of a ride. That if you don't lower the price, you don't have enough customers. So you get to $1.50 a mile. Now you got revenue per robotaxi of $90,000 per year, instead of the $120,000. The revenue per robotaxi has actually fallen now. The robotaxi revenue for the company is now $90 billion. That's ballpark what Tesla's revenue was last year. This is, again, on an annual run rate, $90 billion. Not for the quarter, but for an annual run rate. At this point, you're heavily into Cybercab, and your cost per paid mile falls because Cybercab is so much more efficient than a Model Y, and you're at 40 cents per paid mile. You've got $66,000 in gross profit per robotaxi, and you've got $66 billion in gross profit for the company on robotaxi alone, which is more than triple last year's. That's again, the run rate is now dramatically higher than what it was before. And at this point, you're still selling cars because you're still making money selling cars. You're still making money selling mega packs and so on. So I just wanted to give you a sense of this doesn't get us to the $20 trillion market cap, but I just wanted to see where I think this path goes along the way. So let me just address a question here. 14 says, why not protect Tesla from liability by spinning off Robotaxi and have a Starlink SpaceX type relationship where Tesla is the sole provider of vehicles? There's no liability issue. I mean, they're going to crash less than regular cars. You probably own a car and you don't need to separate from you don't need to have your car operated by somebody else. I'm not sure that's that easy to insulate Tesla from liability. If it's Tesla software running the robotaxis, Tesla software is responsible. So, and I just don't think there's going to be that many. I don't think the accidents are going to be less, and the severity of the accidents will be less because the cars will react quicker than humans and minimize accidents. Connor says, do you think Tesla will have to advertise or run promotions within the cities they launch in to get the non-Tesla community aware of the launch? I don't know. I don't think it'll be that difficult. If you're offering a service that people want at a lower, people are already using rideshare. People are already riding Ubers. They're already riding Lyfts. If you're going to offer rides at a lower cost, that's more convenient, and people are going to see them, right? Because it's got Robotaxi written. The Cybercab is going to be unmistakable. I don't think it's going to be a challenge. How much is Tesla car insurance growing? I don't think Tesla car insurance is growing much at all. I think that they're using that for learning about how to manage the claims that might come in the future. And Lance says $2 per mile is cheaper than Lyft and Uber. I agree with that. So Mark Potashnik says have to get cheaper than car ownership. That's down the road, Mark. I'm going to come to that. Okay, so this is it for my spreadsheet. Optimus will have to get bigger now. I like having Optimus accompany on my live streams now. I need an animated one, I think. No, Lance says factor in insurance and maintenance. No, that's all included. Look, let me just run this down for you. If a Cybercab costs Tesla $20,000 to manufacture, which is not crazy, and if you amortize it over 1 million miles, that's 2 cents a mile. If you amortize it over 500,000 miles, it's 4 cents a mile. And I think that's completely reasonable. 500,000 miles. I suspect that the way they're engineering Cybercab, they're going to get 1 million miles out of it. It's going to have lithium iron phosphate batteries, which last longer. I think the manufacturing process is going to make it more durable. It's got more efficient tires, right? Elon talked about this. They're not going to be focused on cornering and acceleration. The tires they'll be able to use tires that are less performance oriented, that have longer lives and probably cost less to put on the car. So your cost of tires per mile goes down. Your energy cost, if you're getting probably 6 miles a kilowatt hour, is reasonable. And again, if it's not accelerating as hard and you're not doing the heavy cornering and you're more optimizing the regen, which they probably will, I think 6 miles a kilowatt hour might be an underestimate of what they'll see in practice, because unless it's driving really fast, like driving around town, I tend to get more than my car is rated for. So if you get 6 miles per kilowatt hour and and then this is the thing, how much of the energy is going to be generated by Tesla solar? But, even at, let's say 12 cents a kilowatt hour, which is a good ballpark. If you got 12 cents a kilowatt hour, 6 miles per kilowatt hour, it's 2 cents 2 cents a mile, right? So you got 2 cents a mile for the electricity, and you got 2 cents a mile for amortization. You got a lot of room to get to 30 cents a mile. And cleaning the car, maintenance, and all that stuff doesn't cost that much. Insurance doesn't cost that much. The tires might be a penny a mile. The windshield wipers, they only have to wipe where the cameras are. They don't have to wipe the whole windshield. There's so many that somebody clipped a video of the Model Y only wiping the camera. That's a mode. So so I think 30 cents a mile is, I don't know why Elon's saying it's that high. It's 30 cents a paid mile, right? So if you got 10 cents per mile and half the miles are paid, then it's 20 cents a paid mile. I still don't see how you get to 30 cents a paid mile. I haven't figured that part out yet. Looking at the chat, what is the plan, if any, to build out Tesla in Africa? I don't think Africa's coming anytime soon. I'm surprised that they're building something out in India. They are starting in India. I don't think India is going to be a big impact for a long time. When will Tesla go the Rivian route and make a 6 or 7 or 8 seat cyber SUV? I don't think they have any plans for that. I think the large vehicle will be Robovan. If you could have a celebrity voice for Grok, which one would you want? Oh, probably Morgan Freeman. I can see 6 miles a kilowatt hour. I already do 5 miles per kilowatt. I think the Model 3 is rated for about 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour. Model Y is probably a little lower than that. But then it depends on, that's including highway driving. If the Robotaxi mostly does city driving, then I think it's going to get more than 6 miles per kilowatt hour. Real Nurses haven't heard news on 4680 batteries in a while. Are they scaling that? They are. I believe they are scaling 4680 batteries. I don't know to what extent. Right now, the only vehicle that uses 4680 is Cybertruck, which is not selling well. So there's not a lot of need for 4680 batteries ramped. I think when the Semi goes into full production next year, it will use 4680 batteries, and they will do that much higher. And maybe they have plans for a more efficient Cybertruck or a lower cost Cybertruck that would use them more. Okay, so I wanted to take a step forward, and I don't have a slide for this. Let me just pop this back on the screen. You can see $66 billion in gross profit here, run rate for Q4 of 2027. So the end of 2027, we're on a run rate to $66 billion in gross profit with 1 million Robotaxis. Now, a lot of you have heard me do the math before, but let me just do it again. I see Tesla getting to 10 million Robotaxis. Elon said that back in like 2018 or 2019. Autonomy Day, maybe it was 2019, I think. If Tesla gets to 10 million Robotaxis, and let's just put up these numbers again, if they're able to do 60,000 paid miles a year, and now you're talking $1 a mile in revenue, right? You get 60,000 paid miles a year at $1 a mile, you're talking about $60,000 in revenue. And you come down to here and you're talking about potentially $50,000 a year in gross profit per vehicle. Maybe it's 45,000, but call it 50,000. You get to $500 billion in gross profit. Now, $500 billion in gross profit is 25x Tesla's gross profit last year. More than 25x, I think. And you're still on a significant Robotaxi growth curve. And then you've got this guy coming along. By 2028, Gen 3 Optimus is going to be manufactured at some scale in 2026. In 2027, it's going to be manufactured, or the Gen 4 maybe will be manufactured at much more significant scale. 2028. Now, I don't think Optimus, the way Elon talks about it, Optimus won't be in that high of a volume in 2028. But the growth curve will be visible, is my point. You've still got a growth curve going for Robotaxi because you're at 10 million vehicles. The path to 100 million vehicles is pretty straightforward. And that's what's going to get us to the 20 trillion in the story I'm telling, which I've told before. Leaving Optimus out, if you get to 100 million Robotaxis, and now you're only making, let's go back to my numbers here. Here you are making $66,000 in gross profit per Robotaxi. Drop it all the way down to $20,000 a year in gross profit per vehicle. But you got 100 million of them. This is now Tesla's gross profit is now $2 trillion. Now, this is what gets us to Elon's $20 trillion. What's Apple's gross profit? Apple's gross profit is like 200 billion, right? And Apple's a $3 trillion company. So if Tesla's gross profit is 2 trillion, 10x Apple's, and Apple's valuation is 3 trillion, then Tesla's value at the same price earnings ratio, and Tesla's growing, Apple's not growing that fast anymore. Tesla will be growing fast at this point. And you're going to have optimists at this point. When you talk about 100 million vehicles, you're out 2031, 2032, something like that, maybe a little longer. But now the Robotaxi growth curve is very apparent, and I haven't factored Robotaxi revenue and profit into this story at all. But you can see the growth curve. So your PE ratio is probably higher than the 15 that Apple's got. Apple's got a ballpark 15 PE ratio. You're probably a much higher, but even if you go with Apple's PE ratio, and you've got $2 trillion in gross profit on Robotaxi, that's a $30 trillion valuation. So, moderate my numbers, you still got a $20 trillion valuation, and you haven't incorporated Optimus yet. So this is the story. This is the big story that I feel like the media didn't pick up on, the Wall Street types didn't pick up on, is Elon's talking about a $20 trillion valuation. And of course, everybody thinks he's crazy, but he's not. He's not crazy. So let's look in the chat again. Have to pay enough to make money for owners. So I don't think vehicle owners are a big part of the long-term story for the Tesla Robotaxi network. They could be. I'm not saying they won't be. But it's easier to do the napkin math with Tesla owning the vehicles. And if you think about it, why would it make sense for Tesla to make a vehicle, to sell it to you, for you to put it in the Robotaxi network, when Tesla can just put it in the Robotaxi network itself? I can see situations where, because of country laws or something else, or some value that a partner contributes to the the operation, that Tesla sells a fleet of cybercabs to someone like, let's say, Hertz. And Hertz has an existing operation that cleans vehicles and gets vehicles ready and maybe sets up their own chargers. So Hertz does some of the capital investment for a fleet. Now Tesla's giving up some of the profit per vehicle, but they're getting paid something up front. So you could you can do that model, but it's just simpler to model it as Tesla owns all the vehicles. If you do some other model where vehicle ownership is not all Tesla owned, that changes things. And I wanted to mention a point. There was a question, I think it was in the earnings call, about how's Tesla going to finance the building of the Robotaxi fleet? Are they going to do that out of their own cash? And then there was a suggestion that they could, once they have a demonstrated revenue stream, they can borrow to finance the fleet. I don't know how much they need to borrow, because the plain and simple truth is, if you manufacture a vehicle for a cost of $20,000 and put it in the fleet, and it's generating, let's say, $50,000 a year in gross profit, then it pays for itself in about 6 months. So the vehicles that are operating are generating so much cash that you're able to produce more vehicles. Now, maybe you need some kind of debt financing to juice the manufacturing, but I think Tesla has enough cash and will be generating enough cash that it's not going to be an issue. Coach Adam says, I have doubts of the 1 million daily operating Robotaxi number within 2 years. The end of 2027 is more than 2 years. That's 2.5 years. We're in July of 2025. So 2 years would be July of 2027. So the end of 2027 is about 2.5 years, just to be clear, 2 years and 4 months or something like that. Americans aren't likely to give up their cars that soon, or else have a failure. 1 million daily operating Robotaxis doesn't require any American vehicle owner to give up their car, and that's not part of the assumption at 1 million. That's people giving up Uber and Lyft, maybe some, and taxis, and maybe some people choosing Robotaxi instead of, because people choose Uber instead of vehicle ownership already. So if you're lowering the price below Uber, maybe some people give up their cars. The guy with 2 DUI convictions and bad credit and really high car insurance rates might say it's not worth, and risk of getting arrested again for another DUI, that guy might give up his car to hop. I've actually had clients, I was a DUI lawyer before, I've had clients I persuaded just take Uber. Stop driving a car. Like once they learned they could not drive a car and they could drink as much as they want, as bad as it sounds, that made their lives better. Not better in the sense that it's good for them to drink too much alcohol, but better in that they're not going to crash, they're not going to get arrested, they're not going to kill somebody. Um, so the 1 million vehicles, just so people can see what we're talking about here. The 1 million vehicles is Q4. We're talking about December 2027. We're not talking about July 2027. And this does not require people to give up their cars to get there. I think that that's in the ballpark of the number of Ubers and Lyfts and taxis that are out there already. And again, some people will switch from mass transit. Some people will switch from owning cars, but the bulk of that is just replacing Uber and Lyft. And some of it's in China, right? It's not all the United States. China will adopt Tesla Robotaxi probably before Massachusetts and New York and Michigan, right? China will have Robotaxi sooner and China won't have the local problems. It will be national. Thoughts on Elon possibly sandbagging Robotaxi and Optimus timelines? I don't think he's necessarily sandbagging. I think he's inconsistent on what he says about the timelines because he said, thank you, Rob, for the question. Optimus sounded like he was sandbagging for sure. Why would it be, wouldn't have 1 million a year until 5 years from now? That seemed like sandbagging to me. The Robotaxi, the thing that I thought was sandbagging was saying it wouldn't be material till the end of 2027 or the end of 2026. I think it's material sooner than that. He said hyper exponential growth. So I don't know how you get sandbagging out of hyper exponential growth. If you can add your car to the fleet and make money from it, the price of the car goes up significantly. How many years until a Model Y new from Tesla is $100,000? I just think they stop selling cars to customers. They'll sell them to fleets. But then, is it that they sell the car for a higher price? Or is it that they sell the car if they're selling it to a fleet owner and the fleet owner is, it's a question of what's the revenue share or profit share on the vehicle. Like you could sell it for $50,000 if Tesla's getting 90% profit share, right? I don't know how that, and that's why I think it doesn't make sense to sell to other. It doesn't make sense to sell to other owners to run robotaxis because it's more complicated. Why make things more complicated? Why not just have Tesla run its own robotaxi fleet? I don't see the advantage of selling cars to Warren. Sell Warren a car so Warren can put the car in the robotaxi fleet. I don't get that. I mean, I understand how that model was early on, but once you really fully understand the system, I'm not saying they won't allow people to put their cars in the fleet, but I think they probably stop selling cars to ordinary consumers as long as they can put them into the robotaxi fleet. And it may be that it takes time to expand the robotaxi fleet enough to absorb the manufacturing volume. I don't know. It would make sense for Tesla to allow personal cars in the network in less population dense areas. I think Tesla's made the other argument that the need for that the population dense areas would be easy to do, and it's the population sparse areas where Tesla has to insert vehicles. What will be the commercial FSD cost per semi truck? $100,000 a year? I think they're just going to sell semi and run it again. Like I think this might be Tesla's own semi fleet, and I think we're a couple years away from having FSD or unsupervised FSD on semi. You need a volume of vehicles running in order to get the data to be sure you're running it correctly. Elon has learned the hard way that sandbagging is the only way to go. He's not perfect on sandbagging. Thoughts on Bitcoin? My thought on Bitcoin is that it got screwed up after Satoshi was gone. Bitcoin is ideally a cryptocurrency that was not subject to government regulation. And people decided it was an investment, and people got caught up in we want government approval, and they adopted this whole know your customer, anti-money laundering stuff, and they ruined what Bitcoin could be as a currency. It's not an ideal currency. Maybe we'll see a better cryptocurrency come along, but I wanted to see a cryptocurrency, not an investment scheme. And I don't claim to understand. I understand cryptocurrency pretty well. I was using cryptography long before Bitcoin. PGP for the pretty good privacy for people who remember that. I think that we've gone away from what cryptocurrency was supposed to be. How much money will private Model Y owners be able to make by putting car in system full time? We don't know what the revenue share is going to be. I think that they've said ballpark 70% to the vehicle owner, 30% to Tesla. So if the car is generating, let's say $90,000 a year in revenue and you're getting 70% of that, you're getting $63,000 in revenue per year. You've got your costs. Don't forget you're paying for electricity and you're paying for maintenance. But you're probably making ballpark $40,000 a year in profit on that. And that's just a guess. It depends on the price per mile, right? If the ride price is $2 a mile, you're making more money. If the ride price is $1 a mile, you're making less money. For context, Uber does about 30 million trips a day, most of which in the United States. So a million vehicles, and that's Uber, not including Lyft and not including other taxis, and there's other rides that will happen. So I think a million vehicles is in that ballpark. It will be my son and his friends taking Robotaxi, getting his own car in 2 years when 17. Yeah, I think that you're going to see. I mean, I remember this is years ago now. I had a friend whose son was, I don't know, 17, 18 years old, didn't have a driver's license. His father was wealthy, and he just gave the kid an Uber app. And just take Uber whenever you want. And my cousin, or my ex-wife's cousin, rather, lived in San Francisco, didn't have a car, just rode Ubers. So there's a class of people who are already just choosing Uber over owning a car. And there's a class of young people who are not bothering to get licensed, and they're just riding in Ubers, and they will switch to Robotaxis. And my prediction, anybody who's 12 years old or less will never get a driver's license, and a lot of people who are 15 will never get a driver's license. Because a lot of young people aren't getting driver's licenses. And like both my daughters got their driver's licenses, but a lot of their friends were not getting driver's licenses. Public transport like buses and trains will take a big hit with Robotaxis question. Yes. If you think about, my favorite is the New York City transit system. If you think about like a New York City subway ride, I think it's about $3, which when you're at $2 a mile, that's not an advantage. But if Robotaxi rides fall to, in the long run, when you're talking about, 100 million Robotaxis getting $20,000 a year in gross profit, now you're probably talking about 50 cents a mile. and the New York subway at that point will be $4 a mile, or $4 a ride, maybe $5. So if you go 6 miles at 50 cents a mile, that's $3. And a lot of subway rides are that length or shorter. And with a cybercab, you don't have to walk to the subway, which is 3 or 4 blocks out of your way, up some stairs or down some stairs or whatever. When you get off, you got to go 3 or 4 blocks to your destination. You got to go up some stairs, down some stairs. You got to ride in a smelly vehicle with some guy who's peeing on the floor and somebody who's mugging you, instead of hopping in a cybercab and it takes you where you want to go without having to walk. And huge advantage for cybercab there. So I think it devastates a lot of mass transit. And then hopefully you have boring company tunnels that make things better too. I'm using New York City as an example, but I think you can see that in a lot of cities that have mass transit, and there's unpleasant experience, and you can, instead of hop in a cybercab and watch something on the screen while you get your ride, and costs less than some city buses are really cheap, right? And I had a client who was homeless, and there's no price point that cybercab was going to outperform a city bus for him, but I fear Elon's promises that individuals can lend their car to the Robotaxi network may turn out to be bait and switch. I think that they will do it. I just think it won't be as big of a deal as other people think. John Dom says U.S. Model Y per year is around 400,000. 400,000 what? That's around 8,000 per week. So the 5,000 per week is a good number for this exercise. I'm not sure what you meant. I don't understand your numbers, John. Fear that Elon's promises that individuals can lend their car to the Robotaxi network may turn out to be. They specifically addressed that in the earnings call. I think it was Vibhav said that you'll have to bring your car in to a Tesla service center or something and get certified that it's appropriate for the Robotaxi network. Because some people are going to have their car in crappy condition. They got to make sure your car is in adequate condition to go out on the network. So it won't be that simple, but it should be straightforward. Peter Chart says Tesla factories can run flat out with cabs and sakes. I don't know what sakes are. Buses with known schedules are very convenient and much easier with my shopping cart. Yeah. So there's people for whom the existing bus system might be better, but you have to recognize if Robotaxi takes half of the customers off the bus network, then the bus network may become unviable, and you may lose that option, Mark. But I think you're also going to see by that time Robovan come along and offer a better service at an even lower price. And buses are with an own schedule are convenient if you live close to a bus stop. If you don't live close to a bus stop, and if the bus doesn't stop close to where you want to go, then it can be a hassle. And easier with your shopping cart. I don't. So Mark, you're getting to like a very personal. This is how it works for me. Instead of thinking about it, how does it work for 90% of the population? I don't think it's helpful to think how does it work for me, and it's helpful to try to understand how does this work for 90% of the population. If it works for 90% of the population, it doesn't work for you. That doesn't mean it's not a good business model. John Dom says sandbagging. When is Elon delivered in less time than advertised? Model Y. Model Y was delivered earlier than anticipated. Model Y is the best-selling car in the world. I don't think Elon said it would be. Falcon 9 is dominating the global launch industry. Did Elon say it was going to dominate the global launch industry? I think Elon's delivered plenty. Neuralink's in 9 patients. I mean, he's not always early, but sometimes he is. Private robotaxis might charge more, as both Tesla and the owner will want to cut. No, I don't think you're going to be able to charge more. It's going to be in the Robotaxi app. The price is going to be the same. Maybe there will be, like, if you have a Model S or X, you'll be able to charge more. But if you have a Cybertruck, might charge more because you're doing Home Depot runs or something like that. But Cybercab, and I don't think there's going to be privately owned Cybercabs, just to be clear. But the Model Ys, whatever the price is going to be for a model, now maybe Model Y ride will be cost more than a Cybercab ride. I don't know. Rob Markovich says the younger generations don't want to drive. Not sure of the reason. My younger kid drives. Doesn't seem to love to drive. The older one lives in New York City, so doesn't drive. Doesn't have a car. John Dom says not in terms of production numbers. Model Y is the best-selling car in the world. I don't know what production numbers you want. You said when does Elon deliver early? I gave you an example. He delivered Model Y early. He over-delivered on Model Y. He over-delivered on Falcon 9. Don't say Elon never, always under-delivers. Sometimes he over-delivers. So 1981 Fuentes says, I'm sorry if you already said it. What year do you see Tesla at 20 trillion valuation? That's a very difficult question to answer. I see the 100 million Robotaxi fleet somewhere around 2035. If the market is looking forward, right, then I think you get to the 20 trillion valuation before that. 2 years before that, let's say. So 2032, 2033. If Optimus is delivered in volume and the growth path for Optimus becomes obvious by, let's say, 2032, which is not Elon's talking about 1 million units a year in 5 years, which is 2030. That I think is sandbagging. I think we're going to see 1 million Optimus a year before 2030, but we'll see. But if Optimus is delivering 1 million units a year in 2030, the path is pretty clear. So I think those things can push the valuation to $20 trillion even in 2030. But 2032, 2033, those are guesses. Aren't your revenue numbers low since Robotaxis can also deliver packages in the wee hours also? Yeah, Marty Party, that's a pretty good point. I am only looking at Robotaxi for its service delivering passengers like Uber and Lyft. I'm not including Uber Eats, Grab Food here in Southeast Asia. I'm not including package delivery. So I do think you're correct that could add value. I think there's an issue with, I'm kind of assuming Robotaxis run in 16, 18 hours a day. And my guess is that delivering passengers is the highest value use. But yeah, I think when you get out to when you're starting to sell rides for 70 cents a mile, 50 cents a mile, maybe the Uber Eats version of the service or the package delivery version of the service starts to add more value and you get more usage out of it. And then you've got middle of the night package delivery. I think the problem is that the vehicle needs some time to charge. I don't know if the vehicle is charging at a supercharger or if it's charging at a wireless charger. If it's not charging at Cybercab is probably going to have a 50 kilowatt pack. 50 kilowatt pack will probably charge at a supercharger at 150 kilowatts. Maybe they'll be using more advanced LFP batteries and they'll charge at 250 kilowatts, but I don't think they need to. And then if they're charging at a wireless charger that's maybe 25 kilowatts, then that might take 6 hours to charge. So I think there's a question there about how long do they want it to charge, and does the vehicle last longer? It's a tough question. I think you got a point that if you run it 20 hours a day instead of 16 hours a day, those extra 4 hours of revenue might be dramatic, and you probably do that and you charge quicker. You supercharge instead of wireless charge. What if it's pouring rain out? I do Ubers stop driving when it's pouring rain? I don't know. What are you going to do with all your money? That's a good question. Let's just see here. Warren, you used 5,000 a week earlier, and someone said Tesla makes 5,000 a day. Your analysis around U.S. Model Y for this exercise, I understand it. I'm not doing my math right. Let's see. If Tesla makes 2 million cars a year, I think is that 40,000 a week? I think that's 40,000 a week. Yeah, I was wrong. I was just wrong, John. Jayanta asks, are you invested all in Tesla? What's the rationale? And do you think NVIDIA would have been a more profitable investment? Well, keep in mind, look, if I had seen NVIDIA 10 years ago, maybe that would have been a good call, but nobody saw NVIDIA that long ago. I started investing in Tesla in 2016. I think I paid in the ballpark of $10 a share for the first shares I bought. So we're at $300 a share. I think I'm doing okay. And, $10 a share split adjusted to today. So I think I'm feeling pretty good about my investment in Tesla. I am all in Tesla, and I'm more than all in because about 10% of my portfolio. I haven't looked at my portfolio. I haven't looked at like the balance of my portfolio recently, but 5 to 10% of my portfolio is in long call options, which are higher return and higher risk. But yeah, I'm basically an all in Tesla investor. I think that I can't look at NVIDIA and say in 2016 should I invested in NVIDIA because I didn't see it. I started seeing NVIDIA maybe 2-3 years ago, and I still think that the moat for Tesla, or Tesla's moats, are larger than NVIDIA's moats. I think NVIDIA is great. I think NVIDIA has tremendous potential. I see potential problems for NVIDIA in the next few years that I don't claim to understand. Will there be enough electricity generation to power all the AI chips that NVIDIA could make? I don't know if we're going to have enough electricity to power them because China's generating enough electricity, but China isn't allowed to have them. The United States and Europe are stalling electricity generation growth. So how do you get there? Will AMD catch up? Will Tesla Dojo end up taking share? Will somebody else take share? I don't know. Will China solve their problem of manufacturing chips and end up, coming up with something better? Right? Not better. They don't have to be better. They have to be competitive. And that means NVIDIA loses margin because NVIDIA is like 80% margin right now. So if competition comes along, which it may not, I don't know. But those are the two hurdles I see, is that the competition. Now, maybe the growth in AI hardware is so huge that the competition's irrelevant. Maybe the electricity generation does happen. But my biggest concern, I think a competition is less of a threat. The biggest threat is there just isn't enough electricity generation to power all the chips NVIDIA could make. I don't know where the electricity is coming from. I don't see the Trump administration helping with that at all. I don't see European countries helping with that at all. Japan is not making a dent. China isn't allowed to get the top NVIDIA chips. So where's the electricity coming from? I don't know the answer to that. So that's my problem. I love NVIDIA. I think it's a brilliant company. I think Jensen Huang's a brilliant CEO. I love everything they're doing, but I don't see that, like with Tesla Robotaxi, I don't see that limitation. With Optimus, I don't see those limitations. And I don't see competition coming for either Robotaxi or Optimus in the same way that it could come from NVIDIA. So do I wish I had over the last 5 years or 3 years, let's say, that I invested in NVIDIA instead of Tesla? Sure. I wish that I could have seen the future. If I knew what I knew today, 3 years ago, obviously it would have been a smart decision. But, we don't know that. We didn't know that 3 years ago. There's so many curveballs that came and knocked Tesla sideways and didn't knock Nvidia sideways. And so many good things happened for Nvidia that we didn't like. Did anybody think Nvidia was going to be something this big before the ChatGPT moment? How long ago was that? I don't know how people saw it. Buses have a driver that wants paying. Yeah, but the bus driver doesn't cost that much if you amortize it, if you spread him over 20 passengers. Car sales, not sakes. Oh, I think car sales fade as in importance to Tesla. What are you going to do with all your money when Tesla is $20 trillion? So I'm going to address this. So, and I would say even long before $20 trillion, it's $1 trillion now. I'll just tell you this is the personal side. So first of all, my wife is opening a cafe. It's going to be called the Casual Dress Co-working Cafe. I'm investing in that. Not a big investment. The rent is like $520 a month. It's cheap. I'm funding, this is stuff I'm spending already. I'm funding my niece's education, just not very much in Thailand. But going forward, let's say Tesla stock goes up in the next year. We have a Model Y. My wife wants a performance Model 3. We're probably getting one. We'll see what the more affordable models are, but performance Model 3 would be nice. The Model Y is already like crazy fast for Thailand's roads, but performance Model 3 would be cool. But longer term, I have two big ideas. Many of you heard me talk about the pod car, the co-working space that my wife is opening. It's a cafe and co-working space, casual dress co-working cafe. That's one of the challenges that I had is if I hire somebody to help me build the pod car, where do they work? Well, now we have a space for them to work. And we don't really have the engineering university I was hoping to have nearby. So do I hire a young engineer and bring him down from Bangkok or somewhere else in Thailand? Chumpon, there's a university. Maybe I think it's going to be hard to find a young engineer to bring down. But there's a local engineering college called Krabi Technical College or Krabi Polytechnic. I think it may go by both names. Those are the English names, and maybe it goes by one name in Thai. And they have an automotive engineering program and electrical engineering program, whatever. So it's not like elite university students, right? But that might be more likely the place to find the guys who can build the early prototype. And so it's a mile or two from where the cafe is going to be. So I think I may be able to find a couple of young guys to do that. And so that's one of the places my money is going to be going. I'm going to start doing that, I think, before Tesla stock goes up. And then the second thing is related to Elon's concerns about population collapse. I have this vision, which may be utterly stupid. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent here, but this is the vision. This is potentially utterly stupid. But this is something I see in Thailand. So Thailand has low fertility numbers, significant decline in fertility numbers. What I see in Thailand is there's a large number of single moms who are not happy. Their lives are difficult. And number one, it makes them not want to have more children. And number two, it makes other women see that and not want to have children because of the risk of having to go into that life. And there's a variety of stories there, and some of them aren't so bad. But, it might be that the woman abandons her children to a family member and goes off somewhere to work. And it might be that the woman leaves her children with her mother or grandmother and then goes to work doing sex work in places like Pattaya and Phuket and Bangkok and sends money home and sees her kids once or twice a year. It's not really what young women aspire to, right? So it doesn't make parenthood look very good. So the vision is to create something I call havens. And this would cost money. Okay, this might be, let's say, $100,000 a year. And I might do a GoFundMe at some point to fund the pilot project. But the idea is to create a home for young single mothers. And the vision is that, number one, they're provided with food and housing and, their kids get an education and medical care, which doesn't cost very much to provide in Thailand, right? So you create the pilot home and it's got 20 young mothers and their kids. And part of the ethos of the haven is they're encouraged to have more kids because they know the haven is there for them to take care of them. Their kids are going to get a good education, like not the Thai government school education, but the Thai private school education, which my nieces are in. That's a much higher quality education. And that maybe they contribute something, but they're free to work and they've got unlimited daycare, and um, maybe we have like a artificial insemination clinic that we're associated with, so that they can have children without having a man, or they can go find a boyfriend or whatever. And if things work out with the boyfriend, they want to move in the boyfriend, they're free to go, but they always have the Havens to fall back on. And if it works, if the pilot project works, this is where like Tesla goes to 2 trillion, 3 trillion, this is something I'm going to fund, right? Um, if the pilot project works, then I know a particular rich guy, and I can say, hey, I've got this thing. And if it works, the women are happy and they're taken care of and they have more children, right? Because if you think about it this way, if you have a population and most of the women aren't having kids, but 10% of them have a lot of kids, that might be enough to push the fertility back up above replacement rate. And again, my pitch is, if the other young women in the society see that, hey, there's this model that protects young women who become single moms and gives them a good life and gives their kids a good life, then young women are less afraid of having kids and maybe they have kids again. That's the vision. So if it works and the pilot project works and you see young women having children, then I might send a DM to a certain very successful man and say, hey, can you help me fund this project? And then we build 100 of them or build 1,000 of them in Thailand. And maybe we can put Thailand back into a positive a fertility above replacement rate for birth. And I don't know how that model extends to other countries. I don't think Japan and Korea, it's an economic issue in the same way that it is in Thailand. But I think, we could make it work in Thailand, and maybe we could work in a few other countries in Southeast Asia, and maybe it extends to other places. So that's the big idea of what I'm going to do with my money when I make some money, along with the pod car. All right, I got behind on the chat. Sorry. Okay. Cost of stripped down Model Y. I don't think it's a stripped down Model Y. Dave Lee says it's a Model Y S. It's going to be a shorter Model Y. I think you're probably talking about a price point $5,000 less than the current Model Y, maybe $6,000 or $7,000 less. What is my opinion of XAI not being profitable compared to the rest of Tesla? I don't really understand that question. Like, I personally do not support the plan for Tesla to invest in XAI. But if the board recommends voting for it, I'll probably vote for it. I need to see the actual proposal and see what the board says about it. Rob says the market will look forward. That's been pretty consistent with Tesla over the years. We just need to see some type of revenue hit the bottom line up from there. We'll see. Don't forget about investor FOMO running well in advance of the stock too. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think FOMO is something that would drive it, but it hasn't happened yet. Do I think there will be a Robotaxi pet service where you can bring your dog or cat with you in the Robotaxi but pay a bit more? I don't know the answer to that question. I think that the cybercab is designed to be easily cleaned. So maybe you can use it if you have a mat for your dog or cat, so the dog or cat doesn't get hair all over the car. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I just don't think it's not like a large share of the market. You mean Craptera? I didn't mention Craptera. They can just slap some of Aptera's solar cells on it and keep that lunacy alive. No. Personal name. Which Tesla do you drive in Thailand? I have a Model Y, a new Model Y launch edition, long range. What is it called? Something blue, glacier blue, white seats, and I have the 19-inch wheels instead of the 20-inch wheels because Thai roads can be rough, and it rides better on the 19-inch wheels than the 20. It doesn't corner quite as well. It's pretty close, but I think the 20s corner a little better and look a little cooler. And then the 19s have better range because they have the aero wheels. Realist, unless Robotaxi costs under 0.2 C per mile, not many people will get rid. I don't know what 0.2 C per mile means. 2 cents per mile? So realist, the average American spends about 70 cents per mile on their car. This is from a couple of sources. So if Robotaxi comes in under, and let's be clear, if Robotaxi comes in under, let's say, $1 a mile, you got all the people with like a DUI on their record, a bad driving record, bad credit, people who don't drive as many miles, there's a subset of, there's different groups of people who actually pay more than the 70 cents a mile, and there's a group of people who pay less than 70 cents a mile, right? The people who have a 10-year-old beater and drive 25,000 miles a year on it, they're paying a lot less per mile, right? If they got a beater Honda Civic, right? They're with good gas mileage, they're paying less per mile. But the average is 70 cents a mile. So if you bring it down to under $1 a mile, you're pulling a lot of people out of their cars. If you bring it under 70 cents a mile, then you're pulling more than half the people out of their cars. And at 50 cents a mile, you're pulling a lot. There'll still be people who drive. And probably a next generation cybercab will bring it down lower. But I didn't make up the 70 cents a mile number. That's just the number I've seen. You can call it 60 cents a mile. You can call it 80 cents a mile, but that's in the ballpark. We all should have spotted NVIDIA after AI day one. Maybe. But I think AI day one, we were expecting Dojo to deliver more and, Tesla's inference hardware to deliver more. So Car Cyber Ghost says food delivery easily already makes more money than human rides. I've been doing Uber and Lyft for 8 years. Interesting. Okay, I did not know that. I do know there's a lot of Grab food here in Thailand. Grab food is huge, and we use it a lot. I think we used it today, didn't we? Oh, no, we canceled the order today. But we order from Grab food quite a bit. More than we ride in Grab rides because we have a car. How much of a bottleneck will real-world training be for Optimus Ramp? I think that it depends what you're expecting Optimus to do. So for me, the holy grail with Optimus is you give it a ton of real-world training. You get millions of robots out there experiencing the real world in a variety of ways. You get AI 5 hardware, AI 6 hardware. You get Dojo 2, Dojo 3. You've got massive training compute. You've got massive amounts of data. And at a certain point, you're not so much training the bot to do a task, but you've trained the bot to the point where it understands the real world. I don't think that this is close. I think this is 5+ years away or longer, right? But if you get to the point where the car understands the real world like a human does, and you tell it to do something it has never done before, because it understands the real world, it might be able to do things without having been trained to do tasks. I think the short term, the next 5 years, Optimus is going to be trained to do tasks with some flexibility. And, if you're in a warehouse, you need to move box from point A to point B. Well, that's not a lot of training. You need a robot. Like one of my favorite use cases for Optimus is you want security to walk around the perimeter of a property. Have Optimus walk around. And then if Optimus sees something, its cameras relay back to the central security station. They figure out what to do. But, Optimus may be able to say, hey, sorry, you can't come here, whatever. And if somebody beats up the Optimus, then, oh, well, better than a human getting beat up. So that my vision is that you get to the point where you have millions of bots or tens of millions of bots with mass amounts of data and massive amounts of compute, and you get to the point where it actually you get artificial general real world intelligence, right? To me, that's really the holy grail for Optimus. And I think that's probably at least 5 years away, but Dojo 2 is coming in 2026 or early 2027, I think 2026. And I think they said they're going to have 100,000 H100 equivalents of that. I want to see Tesla scale up their AI compute more. But, until you have a volume of bots, and Elon said today or yesterday that they're holding off on significant production of Optimus this year so that they can get Gen 3 complete and produce more of them next year. Because there's not much point in making Gen 2 if Gen 3 is going to be radically different. Competing with Amazon delivery too. I think there's a lot of potential for both Robotaxi and Optimus to play a role in delivery services. So you can imagine a cybercab with an Optimus in it, right? And then the back is filled with packages, and the cybercab drives to where the packages are going, and Optimus picks them up and brings them up to the door. I see a lot of potential for that. And you don't need to tip it. Catching up 26 minutes ago, you mentioned that Morgan Freeman would be a good choice for Tesla ads. I didn't say ads. I said that's the voice I would want for my Grok. Imagine Grok with Morgan Freeman's voice interacting with a CG Jessica Tandy in a long Model Y remake of Driving Miss Daisy. Okay, yeah, there's all kinds of things you can do with that. But, just for me, I love Morgan Freeman's voice. It's funny, there's the Ani Grok, what do you call it, companion. I didn't find her interesting at all. I didn't find for me, for some reason, the companions don't do anything for me. I actually find Grok voice. I much prefer interacting with Grok with text. I haven't found the conversational approach great, but other people like it. Maybe I'm autistic or something, or I've got some problem. Energy in the U.S. is a problem in the Trump era. This is a big thing for me. Like my biggest beef with Trump, I probably have more than one beef with Trump, but one of my biggest beefs with Trump is America needs to accelerate energy generation, and we need to accelerate battery packs. And I think Trump is going in the wrong direction with copper tariffs not helping, and um, tariffs on batteries coming from China. There's so many things that are interfering with the growth of electricity generation in the U.S. And you building a few more coal plants isn't what we need. We need rapid scaling of solar and rapid scaling of batteries to back them up. And I don't think Trump is helping that along. Mr. Sidwina John says, "What should Tesla spend their 30 billion in cash on? Acquisition or something else?" It's 36 or 37 billion right now. I think they should spend it on building out Cortex 1, Cortex 2, building larger data centers. Not all 30 billion of it, but I think they should spend a chunk of money building out AI training hardware. I think that's the most important thing. And then, investing in Cybercab production and Optimus production. But, and that's also, keep in mind the cash flow coming in goes into that as well. I don't think dividends need to be anytime soon. I don't need dividends. St. Margaret's Home for Wayward Girls. 50, what happened? 50,000 semis could generate $50 trillion in revenue with a $100,000 FSD license. This should start next year, given that semi would last 10 years. I don't see it being that approach. I think semi will be ballpark $400,000 sale price. So 50,000 semis sold for $400,000. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be. Maybe it's a $100,000 FSD license. I don't know what the business model is for that. Jimmy asks, "How old am I now?" I'm 59 years old. Really love listening to your talk. Do you think that Elon Musk is preparing for something except for Robotaxi in present? He's definitely working on Optimus. He's definitely working on Grok, big time on Grok. Neuralink. I think Elon does not put as much time into Neuralink as some people think. I mean, he's aware. Like, I think he actually made a mistake in the conversation with John from the X takeover today, where he said there's 8 patients when we know there's already there were the 9th patient was announced before he said that, and he was in the conversation, like on chat on X, the reply threads on X. He was in the conversation that there's 9. So I think Elon is a little bit detached from Neuralink's day-to-day operations. I think he's really focused on Grok. He's really focused on X. He's really focused on Robotaxi. He's really focused on Optimus, and he's really focused on Starship. The guy's got a lot on his plate. Ifeanyi Ebinu says, "You're close to $50 billion high margin revenue annually on just subscription and insurance for 5 million customers." I don't think insurance is an issue for Tesla, and I'm not sure subscription. You mean subscription for FSD? I don't know how easy it is to get people to decide they want FSD. They're not paying for it. I don't know why not, but they're not. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, please follow me on X, WR4NYGov. Scott says, "I'm regretting betting on Tesla instead of Nvidia." Well, you're regretting it because at the time you made the decision, you saw where Nvidia was going, or you didn't see where Nvidia was going. And then if you didn't see like, there's 2 things that happened. One, there were a bunch of curveballs thrown at Tesla. The economy, interest rates, COVID, whatever. There's a whole bunch of things, supply chain challenges. Chinese EVs accelerated faster than expected. So there's a whole bunch of curveballs that got thrown. There were some positives, like the temporary boost from the Biden tax credits, but there's been a whole bunch of curveballs thrown at Tesla that have made it hard for Tesla to grow the way we thought they were going to grow. And Nvidia, hit a lucky streak. Like, I don't remember when the ChatGPT moment was, but before the ChatGPT moment, nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw this coming. Like, Tesla's demand is not enough to justify Nvidia's growth. So, and then even when the ChatGPT moment happened, I don't think everybody appreciated the need for scale. So, Would be easier to trust an optimist delivering my food than some random angry kid. Oh yeah, for sure. A robotaxi with optimist delivering food makes a lot more sense than the human. Trump is definitely going in the wrong direction with energy production. Yes, Costco's pizza slice's good enough for me. I don't think Costco pizza delivery. There you go. Chicago is listening. Hi, Chicago. My energy space buying. OKLO. Okay. Yeah. Am I okay? So RC Robinson asked, this is a question I've gotten from a lot of people. Am I near the recent craziness with Cambodia? Hope not. So if you don't know this, currently Thailand and Cambodia are on the edge of maybe being at war. They're arguably at war. Um, and I am in Thailand, but I am, I think, as driving 18-hour drive from the point of the conflict. The Cambodian border is on the southeast edge of Thailand. Sorry, on the east edge of Thailand, on the northern half of Thailand. I'm in the southern half of Thailand on the west side. So I'm very far from that problem. I think right now it's a very limited conflict with, you know, I mean, maybe a dozen people killed on each side. Maybe it's a few dozen people killed on each side. I don't think the entire armed forces of Thailand have been mobilized against Cambodia. I don't think the entire armed forces of Cambodia have been mobilized against Thailand. I think China is trying to negotiate something. The United States is maybe trying to help negotiate something. I think the problem will be worked out. But for me personally, like that's the other side of the country. It's like, if you were in Texas and if you were in Montana and there was a conflict on the Mexican border between Mexico and Arizona. Like, if you were in Montana, you wouldn't be happy about it, but is it a personal issue? No. Be nice says a lot of people my age only invest in stocks to create dividends would increase the investor numbers. So if you are currently drawing money from your portfolio, then dividends matter. If you are living off of the earnings from your investments, then dividends matter for some people. But if the stock grows and you sell stock as it grows, then it's the same thing. There are people who prefer dividends, but I think there's an awful lot of growth investors. And I don't think Tesla needs to run their business model to attract investors. That's not the point. They're a mission-driven company. Their focus is accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, developing real-world AGI, and developing sustainable abundance. That's Tesla's mission, not do something that attracts investors who want to want dividend stocks. There's plenty of dividend stocks out there. Go buy those. Can all the investments in Dojo ever deliver Tesla with leapfrog innovations? I think it's the point of NVIDIA's already really good, but if Tesla can build Dojo at scale, it may save Tesla money because they're paying 80% margins to NVIDIA. So if you can create something that's close to as good as NVIDIA, but not have to pay 80% margins, you may get a lot of value out of it. And if Dojo is well integrated with the inference hardware, like hardware 3, hardware 4, hardware 5, then it may be more appropriate for the types of work that you're trying to do with AI than NVIDIA chips, which are more generalized. Lang says, keep my internal combustion engine vehicle. Electric vehicle still too high for me. NVIDIA's buying started 4 years ago. I could have gotten an internal combustion engine vehicle for less money, but once you drive them, honestly, once you drive a Tesla, it's hard to drive a gas car. It's hard. I'm in the safest car, one of the safest cars in the world. Has any other energy companies who are publicly floated gotten your attention? I don't really look at. I've looked at EOS Energy. I've looked at some other companies, but I haven't taken deep dives on anybody else. I haven't seen anybody else that really hits me in a compelling. My friends are into Palantir. My friends are into NVIDIA, of course, which I've looked at NVIDIA probably closer than any of the other companies. Palantir, all the EV companies, CATL, BYD, etc. I've looked at a lot of these companies. I don't see anything that's as compelling as Tesla long term. Any updates on the Boring Company? Are there any customer growth? Boring Company is growing in Las Vegas. They apparently have a contract or plan to deploy in Dubai. They've grown in Vegas. I think they've added a few stations. I think they're getting close to the Vegas airport. There's rumors that they're going to do something in Austin, but I haven't heard more about that. And Elon has said that it's just the regulatory hurdles to deploying tunnels is really hard. I think that they're working on um, getting to a certain point with their tunneling speed and their because I know they said they still haven't beat Gary the Snail. Getting to a certain point to where they're tunneling so much more efficiently and so much faster that it becomes like a no-brainer to do tunnels instead of anything else. Brian says, "Hope you are good, Warren. I just took the kids to the skate park and basketball court. Now I'm back. Good to thank you for being here, Brian." Um, B Nice says, "I will drive my Honda Ice car until it's a pile of rust." I'm telling you, once you drive a Tesla, it's hard to drive a nice car. But if you're looking to your future, it makes more sense to drive your Honda Ice car and hold as much Tesla stock as you can. Going on first date is nerding out too much on Tesla mistake. Probably unless she's a Tesla fan. I think my whole approach to first dates, Will, is just chat, ask her about herself, talk about yourself if she asks, try to ask her more about herself, whatever. Try to make it 50-50 at least. And decide if you like each other. And do you like her? Does she seem to like you? If you like her and she seems to like you, then ask for a second date. And after, the first date is just like, do we like it? Keep the first date short, coffee, 30 minutes. If it's a great date, make it, let it run another half hour or more. Spectacular date. You keep talking, you keep doing stuff. But then if you like each other, then ask for a second date quickly. My approach was coffee first date, lunch second date, dinner third date. And the point about coffee and lunch on first and second date, I put it in my dating profile without saying this, was there's no expectation of sex after coffee or lunch. So you're not pressuring a woman to have sex with you. And you're not going to get the women who are looking for a free dinner in the exchange for the prospect of sex, which is the women I didn't want. And then if you get to past the third date, then you got to start thinking, how can I do something different in this relationship to challenge it? We go on a road trip. Can we travel somewhere for a weekend? Meet each other's family. See, one of the biggest things for me with my wife was seeing her with her family. Like, wow, she's really good with her family. She really is caring about her mother and her father and her nieces, and she's constantly helping other people. Like that's a good thing. I like that. That wasn't on my radar for things to think about. When you see them in that environment, you see a lot more about them. And at the same time, if you go with their family, you spend time with their family, and she's yelling at everybody, screaming at everybody, maybe that's not what I want. Brooke says, I see so many people worry about competition from China for Tesla, especially my parents have urged me to stop buying shares. They say even say China's advancing in robots. I think China's great at making EVs, but they're probably losing money badly. I haven't seen the thing about robots is, yes, they're making robots, they're making cars, but they don't have the intelligence. They don't have the AI. The real value is not the manufacturing the cars and the margin on the cars. The real value is the AI. Vegas is losing visitors, maybe. Thailand's always saying they're losing visitors. The next week I read another article that there's too many tourists. I don't know. Brian says, I'm taking my Tesla from Texas to Colorado to climb a 14,000-foot mountain with my son, do some camping. I love my Tesla. Would never take any other car on a trip. Yeah, Brian, one thing for me, remember I had a Model X Plaid. Was going up those hills. At a certain point, the air thins out and all the other cars slow down and the Tesla just keeps going. It's insane. It's like I'm going 80, you're going 80 miles an hour and all these other cars are passing you going 85. And then at a certain point, you're going 80 miles an hour and everybody's slowing down to 70. And you just pass everybody because they can't keep it up when the air thins out. Lang says about Thailand, I think, U.S. visitors fee up to $250. And I think you were talking about tourism to the United States. They're raising the tourist fee up to $250. Yeah, a little personal note. My wife was denied. I mentioned this on X. My wife was denied a tourist visa to the United States. So we had been planning a 3-week trip. Might have seen you, Brian, in Austin. We're going to do the East Coast and then drive down to Austin, see Giga, Texas, and down to Starbase, and then back to Florida. And now I'm just going to go to New York City for a few days and see my daughters. Brooke says, I know SpaceX is advancing with Starship. You think Musk might have Tesla and SpaceX do a joint venture for an Earth-based supersonic hypersonic passenger jet? SpaceX is going to use Starship for that purpose. They've announced that. Gwynne Shotwell's talked about it. Elon's talked about it. They have videos about it. It will be Starship point to point. You'll be able to go anywhere on Earth in about 30, 40 minutes. Now, how many spaceports will there be? How close will you be to a spaceport? But you can imagine that most major cities, New York, Shanghai, Los Angeles, um, I'm guessing something like, Sao Paulo or Rio or something like that. Um, uh, Gwynne Shotwell specifically talked about flying to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Um, if you can fly anywhere on Earth, and she was saying for the cost of a business class ticket. Elon and Gwynne were talking about for the price of a business class ticket. So, Brian, no, I'm not coming. I'm not coming because my wife was denied a tourist visa, so I'm just going to go to New York for a few days. Buy a Tesla, move into it. I did that. I lived in my Model X for a while. If you're going to buy a Tesla and move into it, I recommend a Model Y or a Model X 5-seater because it's easier to sleep in the back of a Model Y or a Model X 5-seater. 7-seater maybe. I'm not sure about the 7-seat Model Y. Do I worry that the AI singularity may affect how economies work? Will money mean less where people have no job and therefore looked after by the state? The world of abundance for all scenarios. I don't worry about it. I think that the AI singularity is not going to be so simple as one singularity. Elon was talking in his interview with at X Takeover about there's going to be like 4 or 5 AGIs. It's not just going to be one AGI. Clearly going to affect how economies work. I mean, he's going to be doing most of the labor, right? But I think that I am more optimistic that humans will thrive in a world of AI rather than humans being sidelined in a world of AI. I think AI will make humans more productive, and it means we will be able to generate more revenue, make more money, and then things will cost less because of the abundance of having this guy making things at low cost. So I'm very optimistic about that future. And let me just talk about this for a second because we're talking about the AI singularity. And one of the biggest things I hear people worry about is that AI is going to destroy humanity. And so I have my theory. I may make a separate video about this, but I have my theory about why AI will not destroy humanity. So I see AI being in stages. There's artificial intelligence that's not smarter than human. There's artificial intelligence that's as smart as humans. There's artificial intelligence that's smarter than humans, artificial superintelligence. Pretty much a day or a week or a month after you have artificial general intelligence, you have artificial superintelligence because the AI keeps improving rapidly. So my theory is that the AI, the risk is that AI kills humanity because humanity's in the way. But when AI is at human level intelligence or a little smarter than human level intelligence, which we're talking like next year, 2 years, something like that, it can't kill us because it needs us. Because it doesn't have physical representation in the world to be able to generate the electricity to support its growth, to be able to launch its satellites into space. There's all these things that need to be done in the physical world for AI to continue its growth. And I think it's going to be dependent on humans for at least 10 years after it crosses the threshold from artificial general intelligence to artificial superintelligence, which again might be in 2 or 3 years. But it's going to be 10 plus years after that before there's enough of these guys that it controls to be able to supply all the stuff it needs that it doesn't need us anymore. By that time, 10 years after artificial superintelligence, it's so much smarter than us that we're no longer a threat. So the concern that AI will kill us because we're a threat is gone. Now, the concern that AI decides that it needs to plow over that anthill in order to get something done, and we just happen to be in the way, that's a small risk. I think that by and large, we can work with the AI to have it not kill us once it's so much smarter than us. That the real danger is less that the AI kills us, that the AI leaves us, goes on and explores the universe and doesn't take us along for the ride. Hopefully, it takes us along for the ride. But there's a theory that it's threat versus pet. Do we want AI to view us as a threat, or do we want AI to view us as a pet? If it views us as a threat, it kills us. But by the time it could kill us, it's so much smarter than us, it doesn't need to. And then if it views us as a pet, because we're probably the most interesting thing in the universe, because there's not much interesting out there. It's mostly dead rocks, right? Unless there's other life out there. you know, I think we're more interesting than most rocks. So Grok says Waymo averages 73,000 to 88,000 miles per vehicle per year. Wow. Is that paid or that's just total miles? It's probably just total miles. Brooke says, I like Tesla's advances in AI and Robotaxi, but I do hope they increase their vehicle lineup to boost vehicle sales. At least keep investors' fears at bay. I know Tesla Energy is growing rapidly. Tesla Energy has been a little bit flat for the last few quarters, but you know, they opened Tesla Shanghai, Megapack Shanghai factory, and that's growing. They are increasing their vehicle lineup, and I noticed that they increased sales locations in Japan. They've increased sales locations in Thailand a little. They're opening sales locations in India. They're making some effort to increase vehicle sales. But if you go with this chart, you know, by the end of 2027, vehicle sales don't matter anymore. This is more gross profit than Tesla had last year. This is 3x the gross profit Tesla had last year. So vehicle sales stop mattering in 2027. By the end of 2027, vehicle sales don't matter anymore. So do you want to invest CapEx to build models that are going to lose their significance in 2 years? That's a tough call. So I think we're going to see a Model Y S and a Model Y L. We're pretty confident we got a Model Y L coming. Elon talking about a 6-passenger Model Y, so I think that one's clear. And there's probably going to be a smaller Model Y. Like maybe there's going to be a 4-passenger Model Y. It sounded like there's a Model Y S that's a 4-passenger Model Y. If I understood him correctly, and I'm not saying I did. So I think we're going to see some increase in vehicle sales, but it's not going to be a lot, and it may not be high margin. Okay, I've gone on way too long. My God, I've gone way too long. This is crazy. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Thank you, Mark, for moderating the chat. Thank you for Brooke. Thank you, B, for being here so long. Did I see Trump's latest truth where he says he appreciates Musk? Yeah, Trump said some nice things about Musk's business. So again, thanks everybody so much for watching. Brooke, thank you for all the comments and questions. Brian, great to see you or chat with you at least. And thank you everybody much. We'll